Okay, I'm re-recording this for like the third time because I'm I'm finding issues that I didn't know about. I was going to show you issues with exceeding the SRB limit when adding new landscape layers, but I could not manage to go over it, which is a good thing, but at the same time, obviously for the purpose of showing you what not to do, it is inconvenient that I couldn't get it to work. Either way, I'm going to show you how to add in a new landscape layer to the material, in case you want to have your own painted layer. Now you could just go into the instance. So for example, let's say in the grasslands biome, here for example I loaded my arid cliffs. This is actually a pretty good example. The arid cliffs are by default just arid cliffs. They're desert cliffs. But let's say I wanted to make them something completely different. Let's just look up cliff and let's grab. Oh no, I want to have some texture variation, so I'm going to use the Asteria cliffs in this part of my map because I felt like it. So let's just look up Asteria cliff and then CO4 S, and I just keep replacing these textures, and I could just eventually end up with my own paint layer. I didn't have to make anything. I didn't have to go into the material graph, and I can make an other material instance. For example, I already have another one here, and I can just check this one out. Let me look up arid cliff so I can find it easier. I can just load the arid cliff, and this material is not going to have my custom layer. If I override the material being used, you can see I can switch back and forth. So let's say I want to have that cliff there, and here I want to have my actual arid cliffs. So I go over here and I just paint this. And if I ever change my mind, I can just go over here and I stop overriding it. So you can already make custom layers by simply messing with the layer config parameters inside the material instances. There are a lot of parameters for textures that you can change. Made precisely for trying to make it as easy for you to add new layers in, and also just being able to modify them however you want. But there might be the case where you want to add an extra layer on top of all of these. Or you have your own material. If you want to add an extra layer on top of all of these, you need to be careful, because if you notice your landscape is going gray, part of it is going gray, like the material is unloading, that is because you are using too many textures. You're loading in too many layers, and it's exceeding the SRB limit. What you want to do in that situation is remove one of the layers. That is the best thing I can recommend you. Let's say I have a swamp biome, and for my swamp biome I add 2 new layers for just painting like swamp floor, like the one that's already here, and then I add another one for like specific like muddy gravel. If I were to do that, I could get rid of, I don't know, my forest floor layer, because I'm not gonna be painting any forest floor. I don't need branches in the ground. I don't need fallen leaves, so I can just get rid of it. And for that proxy specifically, I can just put in, let's say this is my swamp, I can just put in this material specifically here, and then all the other ones can still have the forest floor layer loaded in. Now, how do you exclude a layer? It's quite simple actually. I'm gonna make a duplicate of this material, and I'm going to name this swamp. So let's just open my new parent material, and in here I'm going to find the forest floor, and I'm going to skip it. I'm just going to skip the forest floor layer so I can save on SRBs. So I connect from here, and now this material over here is just not going to be loaded, except it might be really okay, this material is just not going to be loaded. You need to check that it's not being referenced anywhere else. As you can see, in my case it is not, so I'm good. It's just not being used anymore. And over here I can now add in this layer that I have, the swamp floor. It's a really simple material, as you can see. Doesn't have anything risky going on. I recommend you always have a mobile path that uses just one singular SRB, one of these, because that is way cheaper. And mobile has more strict limits on how many textures you can have loaded in. And now using my swamp floor, I can just add it in like this. The reason I'm connecting this here and this here is because this asks for a material and this asks for a height map. This gives me a height map and this gives me a material. Now, you can also add wavy sand, and then in that case I will get rid of Stree, but be careful when getting rid of Stree, because if you're using the Artemis, the chapter 3 cliffs, you are going to notice that you are going to be missing your Stree material. So if you're not using the chapter 3 blending, then you're good to remove them, but be careful with that, because you might see that something is wrong. Something isn't right. As for all of these layers, these three, you might think that removing these will help, but it actually won't. The reason behind that is that these don't use any textures. These are not using any texture. This is just using the grass texture that is already being sampled. Now, you could get rid of these if you want to for having less litter, but it's not going to make a big difference, and it's not going to give you enough to make an entire new layer. So that's how you add a new layer. And obviously now I will make an instance of this one instead of this material. So I can come over here and let's put this in right here, where I said my swamp will be. So I'm going to make an instance. Just going to call it deal instance SOMNi swamp. I'm going to put this in, and it's going to look the exact same, except for the fact that why is the forest floor still here? We skipped it. Did I not apply changes? Okay, I didn't apply changes. So you're going to notice the foliage is still here. You are going to have to get rid of that manually, because the paint layer and the foliage layer are two separate things. So if you have painted forest floor, the paints, like the 2D textures, are going to be gone, but the foliage is an independent thing, so it's still here. And I have my swamp floor layer here. I'm just going to paint right here. Now, if I exceed the bounds of my proxy, you're going to see something happens. Let's go over here. So let's say I'm painting my swamp, and then I get to this edge. You can see the trees by selecting the proxy. You can see there's a yellow line here. If I try to paint into it, it obviously won't load, because again, this is something, a change we did for this specific proxy. So you want to be very careful with how you plan out your biomes if you want to have like a lot of different textures, because proxies are pretty big and you need to keep that in mind. Now with cliffs, there is a slight issue, which is that cliffs are quite expensive. They use a lot of samplers. So what I'd recommend in those scenarios is just, for example, imagine, let me find a good spot for this. Okay, right here. I wouldn't have to worry about blending this cliff into this cliff. Let me make it more obvious as to what I'm trying to get at by simply loading in, what is it? Let's go with swamp, actually. Why not? I'm going to make arid. Don't worry about the forest paint. That's not what we're worried about right now. So let me load the arid cliff layer and then just make it the default. I think it's right here. Use desert cliff material. If I turn this on, the default is going to be the arid cliffs. As you can see, don't worry about that. I don't have to blend this into this because there's grass in the middle. You can get around this limitation that you can see here that way. You can also use modular pieces. I believe Fortnite does this themselves. You can just use modular pieces in the middle to stop these really awkward cuts. But it's not. Oh, look, this. I think this is perfect. Yeah, this is perfect. Look at this. It's seamless. Like you don't realize that there's two different materials here. So if you are smart with your terrain and your proxies, then you can have as many biomes as you want. But you need to keep in mind, if your material is going gray, that's because you're exceeding the SRB limit and you need to step back and remove some layers. There is one layer that I think a lot of you might not have to use, which is the asphalt. So I'm going to show you how to add a switch to like directly not load the asphalt layer. Now the way I'm going to do this is by doing the same setup that I'm using for the sand and the gravel priority. So don't worry about it. I'm not going to show you how that works now. I'm just going to make one for the asphalt. So I'm going to name this put load asphalt layer. I'm going to make it enabled by default, and then I'm going to move this over here. And what we want to do is, since this is the output with the blended asphalt, we want to move it over here and connect metamaterial to true, because this means that we're loading the asphalt layer. The height map to true, and then we can just control and hold click and reassign this here. Let me reconnect that. Control click, we reassign all of this here. You need to drag, you need to hold. And then if I double click here, I can add a little dot, which is really convenient for organization. And add this over here, which is not going into the asphalt anymore, it's just directly skipping it. So we're using this output from the sand at the very end as our final output. So put this over here. This is our parameter. Okay, this seems good. And then I'm just going to apply. Actually, there is one thing I'm seeing. The alpha over here. If we are going to be skipping in the asphalt layer, we don't want to load that because we don't need it. So we're just going to take the output that's meant to be there, put it into the switch. So if true, just what was there already, and if false, just make it 0, so it doesn't have to load any textures at all. And this way, we are capable of loading and unloading the asphalt layer whenever we want. So let me show you. I'm going to paint some asphalt over here. And then with the asphalt painted, I'm just going to go into my landscape. Actually, I want to make sure I'm using the right material, which is this one. And let's look up asphalt. Wait. Asphalt, load asphalt layer. If I turn this off, it's going to go away. It's not here anymore. Now, you might be wondering what happened. Why is it turning yellow? Because I forgot to do something very important. If we go back to the material function I was modifying, let me make a name reroute so we can reference this easily. Load asphalt pool over here, and let me just take the switch. So the issue I'm running into is that the asphalt is still being referenced for this last thing. This is the grass color border mask. Notice how the grass color goes yellowish when blending into another layer. So I think you can now see what's happening. So we just need to make an exclusion for that. So in this case, I'm just going to put this into true, and then this into false. I'm just going to look up my load asphalt pool. Please don't make your material graphs look like this. You can make them look better. Like, look, I'm going to do it right now. Actually, let's move this over here. Make this a little tighter so I have more space. And then move this over here. And now this is a lot more clear as to what's happening. So I just apply, and there we go. Now my asphalt is not being loaded, and it's not affecting the grass color. I need to check on grass plates, so give it a second. I want to see if the grass plates are alright. I think me making that value 0 might have messed with something, so let me make it 1. Okay, there we go. It was just that. Now, a better practice than doing this will be to find where this is being used and making an exception here directly. So I'm going to just paste this in. Using asphalt, use this. If not using asphalt, just grab the mod. We don't need to reference the asphalt. Look up our bool, load asphalt bool, this here, and apply. You should probably just do this. It's better material logic. There we go. That's better now. So that's how you add your own layer, that's how you remove a layer. And if you want the explanation as to how layers are being added and what determines the order in which they are rendered, it's basically the last layer that we add is going to be the one on top of all the others. So for example, this tree is on top of all the other layers because it's the very last one we add. And then it can also be the snow, if I can find, I think it's right here, right? Yeah. So the snow has a special setup, but you can turn on a switch to make it by default the layer all the way to the top. But sometimes you might not want that, so there's also an option to have exclusions for the snow where other layers can be on top of it. The way I did that, you can check that out here. It's kind of a very very rough material logic, but it works, so I'm keeping it the same. But you could probably make it better if you want. You can move the snow like to be rendered in common landscape layers if you can have it everywhere on your map. But you don't have to. In most cases, you can just get away with removing a layer and then painting the snow, and it should be fine. Actually, when I was trying to record this, I was trying to show you what happens when you go over the SRB limit, but as you can see, I could not get that to happen, which I think is really funny. Because it means that it's not easy to reach it on this material, which is good. But it can happen. It has happened to me while working on it, so be careful with that. I am going to show you one last thing as I think about it, which is adding biomass support. Ooh, hold on. I'm going to restart UVFN, so give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, UVFN is now open again, and it's not dying on itself, as you can see, which is phenomenal platform. I was going to show you how to add biomass support to your new layer. I'm going to show you the lazy way. So I'm going to go into the swamp, and all I'm going to do is just going to go into my swamp floor. Then I'm going to open one of the layers that I know use a biomass. In this case, the biome forest. I can just use this material function. Grab it, and then let me move this over here so I have more space to put this in. And then this RGB, I just put it into what color values I want to use. If you're confused by what I mean by that, if I go to a material instance and I go to the bottom over here, you can find all the biome colors. If you don't know what that means, watch the previous tutorial, but all of these biome colors, you can change them to be whatever the hell you want in here. And remember to also modify biome colors directly so it's consistent, unless you are doing the proxies trick I showed you, but you know, get away with what you can. Now, if I wanted to add my own set of colors for this layer specifically, I could just do this, where I copy these values, this setup rather. I move it over here. I move this down so it looks nice and neat. And very important, I changed this from forest to swamp. So I do this, tropical, and then desert. And then I copy this, and I just connect this, and change this input name from forest to swamp, and change the output from forest to swamp again. I apply. I go to my new material function, and then RGB. Where is swamp? Right there, swamp, and then output swamp, and I just apply. And now, if I were to have my biomass set up, which I do not, you will be able to see that based on those, I can change the color. Hold on, let me find where is the swamp? Over here. So if I open the deal instance and I go down, I'm going to find my new. Noticing a lack of swamp colors in here. What's up with that? Oh, that's why. it's using the it's using the wrong group. This will be fixed for the release version. Don't worry. You can see, there we go. My swamp is here now. By the way, you can use this for modifying the base color of your layer if you're using biomass, which is really convenient. So that should be everything. For real this time. Okay, so I lied. I forgot to show you how to make your own foliage layer, so I have to show you how to do that now, which is actually surprisingly simple. So I'm just going to do this very quickly, just follow along. I'm going to make a new foliage group for flowers. So SOMNi flowers. I'm just going to rename this to be my flowers. Okay, I'm going to enter here, and I'm going to hide this. Then I'm gonna go to meshes. I'm going to find Hermes flowers. I'm going to overwrite this with my own material that I want to make. Let's say over here, flowers, paint. Then the color I want, oh no, I want red, orange-ish flowers. Boom. Then boom, like that. So it's ready. I just grab the material, put it here, and then I want kind of a high density, so I'm going to use the headers as reference for how high density should be. So just looking at this, resist quality 50, take that. Quality 50 by default. 0 on low end platforms or low graphical settings. You can enable, if your foliage is important to gameplay, you can enable it here. If you just turn this off, it's going to be the exact same on all platforms. Now be careful with this, because that does mean it's going to render even in performance mode, and you don't want to do that if it's like something that's expensive. So make sure your material is optimized for performance mode. And now I need to be able to paint it, so I'm going to go to my material and find foliage outputs over here. I'm gonna add a new foliage output, which is going to be, I call it flowers. I'm gonna make it specific. Oh, no, flowers is fine, I guess. And then my new foliage group is, where is it? My flowers. Put this in there. Landscape layer, okay. Layer sample. I'm going to name this my flowers, because I don't think that's being used. Watch out with using just straight up flowers, because there is a flowers already. Flowers layer, so just, you know. And then I want to make sure my flowers don't show up on cliffs, so I just subtract my mask from where the cliffs are. Make sure to saturate your value. If you if you add more, I just always do it for good practice, because it's really not, you don't really lose anything by doing it. And then I'm going to rename this to my flowers. This is a name reroute, because that way we can call it here again. If I look up my flowers, I can get that output. Connected. Apply. Go to landscape mode. Why does it take so long to go into landscape mode? Paint. Add new layer. Scroll down. My flowers. Was it my flower or my flowers? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. We're about to find out. Save. My flowers. Paint. Did I do it? Oh yeah, no, you can tell I did it. This looks awful. Don't do it like this. But I mean don't do it like this, as in don't make the material on these so damn saturated. Okay, that is way better. Whoa, okay. Okay. There we go. Now that's actually kind of nice. So that's how you add a foliage layer. It's quite simple. And if you want to add, let's see, I want to add to my already existing gravel, I want to add foliage to it, right? So let's do that real quick as well. I'm going to see if I have my gravel. I don't. So what I'm going to do is just I'm going to make sure I'm using the right landscape layer sample. Gravel. I go over here, do this, and then I don't want it to show up on cliffs, so we just do this as usual. It's literally the same setup, actually. It's just the same exact setup. Now, there is a difference. If you want it to be, if you don't want your foliage to collide with the grass blades, you can just use this, the grass switch, which is going to help you have more of more a strict mask. What do I mean by that? You're gonna have to paint more, like the intensity of your paint is going to be higher for the foliage to appear. So I'm gonna do it like this. I should do this at the end. Please do this at the end. That. Name this gravel. I go over here. Add a new one. I'm going to duplicate the paint tree over here. I'm going to call it, I don't know, gravel. Seems pretty intuitive. You want to open that, and then pretty sure we have access to some pebbles. Yeah, Hermes gravel. You should probably set up your own material for this, just for good practice. I just want the pebbles, and I'm gonna make them like very dense cat rows, in my opinion, but you know, to each their own. Look up gravel, foliage gravel, excellent. Connect it here. Type my gravel, because I don't know if that's the one already that says gravel, just to make sure. Here, boom, apply. Did I do it? I'm unsure. Foliage gravel, we have Hermes. Oh, is it this? There we go. My scale is just really small. let me get like that. Yay! I have my foliage now spawning on the gravel layer. Look at that. And as you can see, if I go to low foliage, it disappears. But then if I turn this on, turn this off, it shows up again. This is used specifically for the bushes, and it's also used on the standard grass. Now I'm going to show you, because for example, if I go on preview mode for performance mode, you will see that my grass blades are still there in performance mode, which is not, you might not want that. So I'm going to show you how to turn that off. So there are two ways you can go about this. You can turn off the grass blades on performance mode entirely, or you can use the lower density. I'm going to do first turning them off entirely, and then the lower density. It's auto-saving, because of course it's auto-saving. Okay, go here and find grass standard. It's all the way to the top. It's the first one. We open grass standard, and then we do this. You did it. That's it. That's how you turn off the grass blades in low-end platforms. Now, let's say I want there to be grass blades, but I want it to be lower density grass blades. Okay, so I'm going to connect grass mobile over here. Apply. And now it should work. Yep, look at that. I have grass again, but it's obviously lower density. And it's its own foliage group. Make sure that if you change one, you change the other. Like, if you make the grass blades here like super tall, you're gonna have to make them super tall on this one as well. So it's for parity purposes. So that should be it. I think I covered everything. Now for real. So again, if you have any doubts, please just send me a DM on Twitter. But you can also comment. I just might not see it because YouTube doesn't really notify me.